Welcome to the Dead Arm Dynasty podcast, where we try to give a refreshingly candid take on the long-term fantasy value of football players throughout college and the NFL for all you Devy League, Campus to Canton, and Dynasty fantasy football managers. We're just three friends who spend all our time talking fantasy anyway, so we figured why not get a few mics and capture our conversations. My name's Rick, and I'm joined by my co-hosts Josh Pecoraro and Jacob Ellis, a.k.a. Jealous. And today we'll be picking up where we left off in our draft recap, looking at wide receivers for Dynasty, fantasy purposes in general, redraft, all that good stuff. Let's kick it off with the number 105 pick to Cincinnati, Jamar Chase, out of LSU, out of that super group with Jamar Jefferson, Terrace Marshall, played with Joe Burrow, and gets to go back to Joe Burrow. What do we think of Jamar's long-term value?
I think that's where I love it. I love the fact that Cincinnati put emphasis in getting Joe Burrow, one of his main targets that he had a great rapport with at LSU. Granted, Jamar Chase was the number one wide receiver in this class, so, I mean, he was going to be going first wide receiver off the board, but I'm glad that Cincinnati went with him. I love it. He's probably the third pick off the board in rookie drafts behind Pitts and Najee, and he slots right in as their number one wide receiver. He's got a bunch of other receivers as well that are good to help spread out the ball as well. You got Tyler Boyd there. You got T. Higgins, who had a great year last year as well, and saw what production T. Higgins could get from Joe Burrow. And Jamar Chase is a lot better receiver than T. Higgins is, so you can get a lot of production out of him, especially with Burrow coming out of his rookie season, coming off the ACL. But Jamar Chase is somebody you're able to plug in day one into your wide receiver position and get some production from.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, I personally would have gone, if I was Cincinnati, I would have taken Penei Sewell. I think he, in that spot. But regardless,
Protect Joe's knee.
Yeah.
Regardless, fantasy-wise, this is probably his best landing spot. So, for fantasy purposes, it couldn't have gotten any better than him falling to, or him being taken by the Bengals, reuniting obviously with his college teammate, and then, I mean, like you said, Josh, T. Higgins had some great production. I still, we still know Tyler Boyd's there, so I wonder kind of where exactly Chase is going to fall into that depth chart. I mean, do you go? I think what would make the most sense would be, probably Chase, Higgins, and put Boyd into that slot position. But Chase can play the X, the Y, and the Z, so he can play all over the field. So I guess I don't really give a shit where exactly, if he plays out wider in the slot, because he can play everywhere, and he's a threat all over the place. The other thing that's encouraging about Chase, Justin Jefferson was LSU's second receiver on that stacked team with Burrow, and he put up these mad numbers his rookie season. So that leads me to believe Chase can do the same thing that Jefferson did last year, if not surpass it. He's a guy that you plug into your, into redraft leagues in as a wide receiver 2 or a flex spot. Ideally, you have a better wide receiver 1, but he's somebody that you can start right away in redraft, and then obviously the same in Dynasty.
Yeah, I think that Bengals trio of wide receivers is one of the best in the league suddenly, and it doesn't really matter where they put each player. I think that Chase deserves to be the number 1 right away. I think Higgins is a perfect number 2, and Boyd's great in the slot, so they've got a recipe for success with Joe Burrow, and obviously Joe Burrow is going to defer to the guy that he loves throwing to all the time, so why not Chase to have a 1,000-plus yard season right out the gates? Good for redraft, amazing for Dynasty, easy top 3 pick for Dynasty purposes.
Yep. Like you said, he's one any format you're in, he's a good guy to grab.
Yep, doesn't matter format at all.
Day one starter.
Yep,
no question.
Let's jump into the guy drafted immediately after him, Jalen Waddle, out of Alabama to Miami. Back to play with Tua again after saying that Mac Jones was a better quarterback than him just like a month earlier than that. What do we think of Jalen Waddle. What's his outlook as this Tyreek Hill-esque speedster who's going to be like the third receiver on this team?
What do you guys think the convo was when Waddle got drafted the first time he talked to Tua after having those comments about him?
Well, I think the good part there is that Tua is just like this insanely kind person who's, very much.
He's got those Hawaiian chill vibes.
He's got the Hawaiian vibes. That he tries to be like Jesus as much as possible. I know he's a devout Christian. I'm sure that Tua did not care at all that Waddle said that, and that saved Waddle from a very awkward conversation that he deserved to have.
I was gonna take that the complete opposite way. If Waddle came up to me and I was Tua, I'd have been like, okay, like Jalen, you're fucking with me, right? Like, like that you're lying to everybody when you say that, right? But thankfully, Waddle's with not a Patriot. He'll have a better quarterback in Tua than with Mac. So Waddle's he's in for a pretty solid career. He draws comparisons. The high end is obviously Tyreek Hill, but he also can draw a very, very similar comp with his teammate Will Fuller, speedster, downfield threat. Fuller's very injury prone. Waddle missed most of last season with a busted up ankle. So I think when he's on the field, he's going to be strong, and I hope he can stay on the field. An ankle, that's a freak thing. That's not like, it's not like some guy who's got, chronic hamstring pull issues or anything like that. It's not a soft tissue injury, so that worries me less. But so I think when he's on the field, he's going to be strong, and he's going to show that he's their top receiver by year's end over Devontae Parker, over Will Fuller, just based on talent alone.
Yeah, he's one of the most talented receivers in this draft, and I do really like the rapport that he had with Tua, so I think that's going to help out a lot. I just want to see more from Tua on the field, though, for him to be a productive fantasy asset.
I mean, straight up talent-wise, I think you could make the argument that he's the second most talented receiver in his division, right behind Stephon Diggs.
Yeah.
The Jets have nobody.
Yeah, Jets and Pats.
And the Pats have nobody.
Not.
You're not going
to until Julio gets traded into it.
Oh yeah, if Julio goes there, okay, that's a whole nother conversation. But you could still make the argument that he's the second most talented receiver in the division, and and those guys get their targets. So,
yep, absolutely, yeah. Dynasty format on it. He's somebody you take in the first round, wide receiver, to hopefully get that rapport with Tua, build on, and have a great fantasy career. Redraft, somebody to target mid to late rounds when they start getting depleted a little bit. Take a chance on him and hopefully be able to plug him in. You should be able to plug him in from day one as long as he's healthy. He's going to be on the field, but it's just you need to see bigger games from Tua to help out with the fantasy aspect. Because Tua wasn't throwing for a ton of yards or touchdowns last year when he was in, but it's his second year now, so you hope more from Tua on that. But again, for redraft purposes, it might be a little bit of a struggle with Tua getting the ball around to the three different receivers and having Waddle be productive enough for you to feel confident putting into your lineup.
That's my only, or well, I guess he's assuming he comes back from that ankle injury strong. I'm good with that, but the second thing, obviously, like you said, Tua last year had multiple games where he threw under 100 yards. We can't have that. Waddle can't have that. So, and I would assume that Brian Flores is going to kind of like let it loose a little more now that there is no Fitzpatrick to, come in and save the day. They're going to be forced to have Tua, with the ball around the field, and hopefully year 2 is when he can make that happen.
Yeah, my only thought to add here is, especially for this upcoming season, where Tua needs to bridge this gap between his not-so-hot rookie season and what will hopefully be an okay rest of his career, is that Waddle comes in to immediately give Tua a short-range target that is also a very dangerous target. Waddle can take a slant to the house so easily, and
Odell
Tua can
Beckham
hit
vibes.
Yeah. Tua can hit a slant. Tua might not be ready to hit the 40-yard bomb to his outside receiver, but he can still hit his guys over the middle. He can still hit Gesicki, and now he can hit Waddle on these mid-range routes that Waddle can then be very dangerous with afterwards. You don't spend a 6 overall pick in the NFL draft on a guy who's going to be just your wide receiver 3 for life. So clearly Waddle's got the talent, and this offense with Tua kind of working his way up, this is a good opportunity for Waddle to be the guy that bridges the gap to get Tua to his potential.
Something else to throw in there, too, is Will Fuller V is suspended for the first couple games of the season, too. So Waddle might have a bigger role.
Is he still suspended?
Yeah.
I thought he served those 4 games for the PED thing. Is that not...
I believe he's still got the first 2 games of this season.
Jeez.
God, that guy. I'm sure he took those PEDs to try to stay healthy, but God, he's doing himself no favors.
Well, I guess take your pick. Injured for 8 weeks or suspended for 6.
That payday makes a difference too. That's why Braun took the PEDs he did. Try to stay healthy so he could get his big payday.
Mm-hmm. That should about wrap up Waddle, though.
Just a quick update. We did mention Julio Jones in the previous segment. We recorded this before his trade to the Titans. He's also going to be mentioned in a future segment, so feel free to ignore any mention of Julio within this episode.
What up, my party people? It's your boy Jealous. I gotta put in a good word for our friends over at Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the absolute easiest way to record a podcast. Anchor has creation tools that allows you to record and edit right from your phone, your computer, or your tablet. Easy as that. It will also distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many other listening platforms. You can also make money directly through the program with no minimum amount of listeners. And best of all, kids, it's free. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Let's move on to his Alabama teammate, Devonta Smith, who is going to rejoin another Alabama QB in Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia. They picked him with the 10 overall pick in the NFL draft, nicknamed the Slim Reaper. His only knock by anyone is that he's undersized. What are we thinking for his value?
Yeah, the size issue is definitely a concern for me. We saw what happened with, Tavon Austin. He got drafted, I believe, he was a top 8. I think went number 8.
Top half of the first, sure.
I think he was top 10, and we saw where he ended up. I mean, essentially irrelevant. So I'm not super high on him long term. However, the Eagles have Jalen Reagor, and their next best guy is going to be Greg Ward, who Greg Ward should not be contributing to a solid team. So Devontae Smith, he will get his targets, he will get his catches, they'll get him the ball, but I'm not super high on him, just long story short.
Yeah, he's a great route runner, though, so he gets open, gives Jalen Hurts somebody to hit. They do have the rapport as well, like the last 2 wide receivers that we've talked about. Jalen Hurts and Smith both played together at Alabama for a couple seasons early on in their career, so you never know with that aspect of it. It's been quite a few years since they played together with that. Yeah, you got Jalen Reagor there, like you had touched on, L. But yeah, it's going to be more on what that offense looks like. You got a new coach coming into Philly this season, and we'll kind of go from there. I don't know.
He's a joke.
It's
literal laughing
sad.
stock.
Yes. So we'll see what that offense looks like. He's got all the potential in the world. He's a talented receiver. Can he hold up with his body size? That's a big question. You hope he can. But, his time at Alabama, he's a Heisman winner. He's talented as they get, and he's somebody, for redraft purposes, you can target. He's going to be playing from day one that you can throw into your lineup. Obviously, you wouldn't be confident with him as your wide receiver 1 or 2, but somebody wide receiver 3, a flex play, might be able to throw him in, probably sit him for the first couple weeks, kind of see what their offense looks like and everything. And then dynasty purposes, somebody that is going to be a first round wide receiver in your league. And again, with like Waddle, you just hope he is able to produce and be a number one wide receiver for you down the road.
Yeah, I think obviously, like everyone says, the size is the concern. He was okay in college, so let's assume he can be healthy. If so, then I think when he goes up against the top-notch corners, I think that's where he's going to struggle because they can rough him up a little more and still read his routes better than the average corner can. So when he goes up against Jalen Ramsey,
that's the guy
I would absolutely not start Devonta Smith at all. But if he's going up against a cupcake defense and they have no corners that can stop him, yeah, he's going to be good. He's going to get his, and it'll work out for fantasy purposes. So he's going to have his value. He's going to be a starter in this league for a long time, and it'll be fun to see whether this this big trend that everyone talks about, that the wide receiver cores in the NFL just in general are getting smaller, and that's going to be okay and normal and successful. We'll find out, and Devonta Smith is a great example of how we're going to find out.
I was just
Jelly
like the Jalen Ramsey. I could see him just bully him, not getting past the that 5-yard mark at all during certain
Devonta
routes.
Smith laying on the ground 2 yards into his route because Jalen Ramsey put him on the ground.
Stephon Gilmore. They're only going to play each other once a year. It's not
right.
Or if that, that the rest of that division, you're not looking at a bunch of stud corners. I mean,
James Bradbury
Dallas
could
barely
do
has
pretty
a
well.
corner right now. They didn't end up getting
James
one.
Bradbury in New York.
Yeah, okay. So New York has the best secondary in that division, probably. Yeah. I mean, Washington has that insane front seven, but their secondary is what's the question mark. And Dallas doesn't. They might as well just give up 7 points every time that they and try to win the game, scoring touchdowns and going for 2 every time, because
they're playing Madden and they're simulating the defense
for freaking real. So I mean, what do you guys think about him in Dynasty versus redrafts? I mean, I would rank him pretty similarly,
very similar,
because I don't see him having, hashtag size matters. I mean,
is that a hashtag?
It is now.
Oh boy!
And so I could see him having a really strong. If he's gonna be a stud at all, it's gonna happen right away, and it's gonna be within his first 2 to 3 years. He's not. It's not like he's gonna pop at year 4 or 5. So
yeah, there's no delay on Devonta. He's not getting bigger.
You're gonna exactly
as time goes on.
So
yeah, I think that should cover it for Devonta. Same for Dynasty Redraft. It's not like his role's going to change. He's already the one. Let's jump into a polar opposite physical specimen. Rashad Bateman, taller, heavier, gonna be that contested catch threat for Baltimore. Picked in the late first round, playing for Lamar Jackson. What do we think Rashad's going to do, not just year one, but long term?
I liked Rashad in college. With us being Wisconsin Badger fans, we got to see a lot of him with our rival Minnesota Golden Gophers. So he was solid as a wide receiver at Minnesota. Very good with contested catches, a lot of yards, a lot of touchdowns. The main thing that I think you guys will agree with me completely is we need to see more from Lamar Jackson throwing the ball too. He's another one that's like Tua, that's throwing for 200 yards a game sometimes, in the hundreds even, and mostly rushing it. So they need to open up their passing attack, and if they do, Rashad Bateman is a great target for Lamar, and I think he'll do wonders in your fantasy lineup. But in the meantime, we need to see a lot more from Lamar Jackson in the passing game for Rashad Bateman to be relevant on your fantasy team, I think.
Yeah, I love him. I love the pick by the Ravens. I thought they got one of the top. There were a lot of good receivers in this draft.
Yep.
But he's still in other years where there wasn't this deep of a wide receiver class. He would have probably gone in the teens just based off his production at Minnesota and his just his straight up talent. So I love the pick by the Ravens. But like you just said, this has to be kind of a wait and see approach, and that doesn't help you in your drafts at all. Of course, there really is no way to have a wait and see approach while you're drafting, but I mean, he's going to step in or at least I would assume he's going to step up into their wide receiver 1 role in Baltimore. His competition is Marquise Brown, who probably should be a 3, and Sammy Watkins, who probably should be a 3 or 4. I would assume Bateman steps in there. He is going to be, him and Mark Andrews Mark Andrews is going to take some of those targets away, just with how much Lamar really likes to use Andrews, especially near the goal line. But Bateman's going to be the best receiver that Lamar's ever had, and so hopefully that allows Baltimore to whip it around a bit. But again, I just don't have a lot of confidence, at least hard confidence, that he's going to be, at least a prominent player right away.
Yeah, you hope with the first-round draft capital that they try and make him more of a focal point in the offense, just with them using the first-round pick at the wide receiver position, and he should slot in as a wide receiver 1, bare minimum, their wide receiver 2 from day one. So in the high-octane offense like they have, you got to draft, if he's available later on in the draft, the number 1 wide receiver for a high-octane offense, and just hope that they start utilizing the passing game more.
The one reason why I do have some pretty high hopes on Bateman, it's pretty clear that Lamar needs some pretty wide windows to throw in. And Bateman is arguably the best, between him and Jamar Chase, the best route runner in this, and Devontae Smith as well. But he's a great route runner. He'll get open, and hopefully that'll allow Lamar to see him and at least get the ball to him within his, catch radius.
Yeah, I'm going to follow the narrative over the numbers here. If we check the numbers, last year Lamar's average yards per game passing was 184, which is atrocious. But if we take a look at just the narrative around all this, last year Lamar had no one to throw to and an offense that was built around him rushing the ball, which was so successful this season before that. And it was still quite successful last year, but teams started to figure out the Ravens a little bit. What the Ravens told us in their draft this season is that they need to change their offense so that they are not so predictable. They draft Bateman in the first. They go get Tylan Wallace in, the third or fourth. They're clearly making a point to say we can't just rely on Lamar to run and a running back to run anymore. That can't be our only tool in our toolbox. So we're going to give Lamar the tools that he really needs to successfully throw the ball. That narrative tells me that this season Lamar is going to end up throwing for, plus over 200 average yards per game, and a bunch of that's going to go to Bateman because Bateman is he goes and gets it and does all the hard work on his end, not Lamar throwing it to tight windows. So I'd like to draft the talent here over some of these other guys that we'll end up talking about because Bateman's got the talent. The landing spot looks gross, but the Ravens are clearly making the commitment to fix it and make that landing spot a little nicer going forward.
I mean, going back to what you said about that Ravens offense, and are they going to really force the passing game? Because even when Greg Roman was the OC in San Fran with Kaepernick put up mad fantasy numbers, just like Lamar is, but none of his receivers really did, as far as I can remember. I guess I don't know who his receivers would have been back then.
Exactly. I think
but that's my point.
Part of the.
That's my point. So I don't know. I mean, Greg Roman's he's going to have to change, and Harbaugh's maybe going to have to force that change, or Ozzie
I think
Newsome
Harbaugh's going to do
upstairs is going to have to really force that.
Well,
change.
I think you have to, just for Lamar's long-term health too. I mean, you keep running him, he's going to get drilled, and his body's just going to start getting worn down too. So I think for their franchise sake, they need to start working on the passing game.
Well, I think even beyond that, in the long-term health of Lamar, I think that we found the ceiling on the Ravens. It's basically win a playoff game, and in round 2, you're probably out. So I think that's more of a concern than Lamar's long-term health, is just,
Yeah.
you have
They
to,
learned
you have
they
to throw
can't
the
win a
ball.
Super Bowl this way. They have to change. Defenses know how to defend them now. They have to change. So they're trying. And that's what I'm going to trust. Obviously, I'm not saying overdraft Rashad Bateman or draft him as if he landed on the Falcons or something, but
That would be phenomenal.
I'm just saying, don't assume that this is going to be the same Ravens as last year, because that would be a horrible management decision, and I'm trusting that the Ravens is a good enough organization to not be that dumb.
Ozzie Newsome knows what he's doing.
Yes, it's a good organization.
Yeah,
They know how to
really strong team.
They planned around how to work with Lamar, and they've been successful at that. Now they need to adjust. They will adjust. It'll be fine. Let's move on. Next up, we got Elijah Moore headed to the Jets, joining fellow rookies Zach Wilson, Michael Carter. He went at the very beginning of the second round at the 2 pick. What do we think? He's a little shorter guy, slot guy, but highly talented out of Ole Miss.
Yeah, I really liked Elijah Moore a lot. I was very disappointed in the landing spot with the Jets. But, again, like we talked about a little bit earlier on, new coaches, so you got to have a little bit more hope than when the other guy was there last year that I'm not even going to mention because he's not worth my time. But you like, too, that they've got a new quarterback coming in. It's fresh, doesn't have any rapport with anyone whatsoever, too. So Elijah Moore's got a good opportunity to carve out a role in the offense and make a big name for himself as well. As far as redraft leagues, I wouldn't be as hopeful. The Jets are going to be down in games, don't have to pass the ball, but Zach Wilson's going to be learning, so it's not going to be huge games or anything like that from Elijah Moore. Dynasty outlook, it's going to be, again, tied to Zach Wilson a lot and what Zach Wilson's production looks like, but I think Elijah's got all the talent in the world and would be able to be a wide receiver 1 and be a very good asset on your dynasty team, but it's going to depend on Zach Wilson, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm a lot higher on Elijah Moore in Dynasty than I am in a redraft league.
Absolutely.
They just signed Corey Davis. He's gonna be out there. Jamison Crowder has been their most productive wide receiver over the last couple of years, which is sad but true. And Denzel Mims, they took early last year, so he's got 3 guys to compete with. Right now, he slots in as of right now, probably their 4th receiver. So he's going to be battling for playing time. But at the same time, in dynasty-wise, I think it's a home run. I mean, the talent is clear. Ole Miss has a really sweet, reputation with wide receivers, especially ones that
DK
go on
and AJ.
between DK and AJ Brown.
LaCron Treadwell. That's
Oh God! Oh
thanks,
God!
Josh.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Really great history.
that was okay. Let's say more recent history then.
Yes. I had to throw that out there.
They all shared a field together, Elijah, DK, and AJ. That's a hell of a wide
That's
receiver
insane.
core.
That's a ridiculous score. Oh my God! I forgot about Treadwell. Holy God! What a disaster! Go Vikings!
Right?
But no, I mean dynasty wise, I think he's more talented straight up just with his athleticism than Corey Davis, than Jamison Crowder. Him and Denzel Mims, I think, are the future of that receiving core, and I would probably think that Elijah Moore has a bigger upside than Mims, so I love him in dynasty. I don't necessarily love him in year 1 in a redraft.
Agreed. In Dynasty, I struggle to see a more stable situation than what Elijah has, besides maybe Jamar Chase. Like, Devonta's going to be the one, but with a Jalen Hurts who does not have a very pretty passing history so far. Jalen Waddle with Tua, who has struggled so far. Bateman in Baltimore, who we just mentioned, don't throw enough. Elijah Moore goes into an offense with a guy who was just drafted to be their new golden arm. Long term, I love the situation he walks into. Even if he stays a slot receiver forever, I don't care. NFL teams all start 3 receivers now. He's always going to be on the field. He's going to get a ton of targets from Zach Wilson. I love the long-term value.
It's just like what we were talking about with the Bengals and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. All 3 of them are still going to be relevant because, like you said, there's pretty much always 3 receivers on the field, unless you're the Patriots and you've got 2 stud receiving tight ends. But
2 tight ends, 7 running backs on the field.
Right. And
19 offensive
they'll probably end
linemen.
up putting like a left guard out wide or something. Like
That's the Patriot way, though.
So yeah,
Let's agreed. Let's move on. Let's jump into Terrace Marshall. He's up next here. He was drafted late second round, mostly due to injury concerns. Could have been a first rounder to Carolina here. Joins a receiving core that already has DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, and now has their temporary, maybe long-term quarterback in Sam Darnold. What do we think's going on dynasty-wise for Terrace Marshall?
Yeah, and again, like Ellis had touched on a little bit earlier, he's part of that great LSU team that won the college championship 2 years ago with Joe Burrow and had great production there. And a little bit of a drop-off from Joe Burrow, I think, to Sam Darnold, but Sam Darnold was solid. I mean, you look at some of the receivers that he had there, that Robbie Anderson was productive when he was there. Jamison Crowder had production there with PPR leagues and everything. So I don't necessarily like the quarterback situation there, throwing him the ball, but long-term, dynasty-wise, I love the fit there. They got a nice high-powered offense, got great receivers surrounding him as well, that it's not just going to be him, that they're looking to feed the ball, and defenses will key in on him. You got DJ Moore there, you got Robbie Anderson there. Hell, you got Christian McCaffrey coming out of the backfield catching passes too. So it's an offense where you don't necessarily know where the ball's going on any given play. So I like him a lot more for dynasty aspects than redraft, because I just don't think Sam Darnold's a long-term answer there, and they're only tied to him for another season after this one, but since they picked up his 5th-year option. So it could be something that they look and see that, oh, he didn't have a great year this year, let's just cut him now and cut our ties and draft a new quarterback, and then you got a whole nother learning situation there as well. So, but otherwise, from his college tape, just phenomenal talent.
yeah. There's no question that Terrace Marshall was drafted in the second round to eventually be, the guy right next to DJ Moore, because Robbie Anderson is on a contract year, and so eventually, once Anderson moves on, that's going to put Marshall right into that number 2 slot. So I love him in Dynasty. As far as redrafts, I still think he's going to be relevant. I would have loved to have him in our draft that we did the other day. I think he's going to end up having a really strong career. Just a good, really strong all-around receiver.
Yeah, everything on tape for Terrace. He just has the look of an NFL receiver. He's got the height, he's got the speed, he's got great hands. He's going to be in this league for a long time. His injury history so far is a couple of different kinds of broken bones, which are not the type of injuries that really worry you long term. They're not the repeatable injuries. So he's got a good shot at staying healthy, at least as much of a shot as any receiver does. And yeah, when Robbie Anderson's shipped out of town, Terrace takes over as the number 2. Maybe they get a new quarterback. Maybe Sam's great. Either way, that's good news for Terrace Marshall long term. Love him in Dynasty, and I was the one that came away with him in our league the other day. So I'm quite excited about that moving forward. Let's jump into someone that Josh picked the other day. Rondale Moore picked middle of the second round to Arizona, joining DeAndre Hopkins, AJ Green, Christian Kirk, maybe Julio Jones? ?
Oh, God.
According to DeAndre Hopkins.
Where is it?
What do they even have left to send?
Yeah. Cardinals are out of value. I don't know how else they can possibly get Julio, but Josh, give me your take on Rondale, given that you just drafted him.
Well, I was pleasantly just surprised to find him still available in the beginning of our 3rd round of our rookie draft
Which is
the other day.
insane.
So I don't know how he fell that far, because he's somebody that I easily could have taken in the top of the 2nd round as well. So I loved him at Purdue. He had great production at Purdue, and Purdue's team was not great at all. We saw them a lot in the Big Ten, and they were pretty much a cakewalk for his first couple seasons as well. So very smaller receiver, but he's one that you could get involved in the run game, running the wide receiver screen or doing whatever out on the side, and just let him get into space and get open with the ball.
Just get him the ball.
Just any way you can. So like with Kyler Murray, you've got DeAndre Hopkins there to take a lot of the pressure off of him. So they'll be the number one corner lined up against DeAndre Hopkins, so he's going to have all the room in the world to run around. And the only thing holding back that offense is Cliff Kingsbury, but that's another subject.
Yeah, Kingsbury, though, won't affect anything fantasy-wise. He'll just affect the win-loss record, where you're almost always guaranteed to be 500 or below. But that's which they weren't last year because of that freaking
Hail Murray.
Hail Murray, yeah. That screwed me on my over/under bet. I had the under at 7.5 on the win total for the Cardinals. They ended up 8-8 because of that freaking Hail Mary. But
that's why you don't bet
That's
kids.
Another subject for another day. What's interesting about Rondale Moore, he's 5'7", listed at 5'7", 180. That makes him 6 inches shorter than Devontae Smith, yet still 14 pounds heavier. But he's still got mad speed. I think he ran a 4.29 or something.
4.29's right.
Yeah.
Just electric speed. Yeah.
Pro day.
Pro day. But still, blazing speed. Again, one of those guys where just get him the ball. He's not going to be, they're not going to line him up out wide. They're going to use him all over the place. And, there is relevance there. I still think that he's going to be, especially early on, while they're still kind of trying to figure out how to use him, he's going to have some weeks where he could put up just absolute duds. But hopefully, I'm thinking year 2, year 3, and they finally figure out, okay, which it may take Kingsbury a while to figure it out. Once they do figure out how to use him, I think he's got some real sweet potential to put up a lot of points. They're going to get him the ball in the backfield, on jet sweeps, that kind of stuff. So in redraft leagues, I'm not super high on him. Dynasty, you're going to probably take him, I would think, mid-late rounds.
I think a good comp, too, for him and his usage and what they should be doing is players that are also in the same division in them, and Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. I think if they utilized him in that aspect, they could be very valuable for the fantasy aspect.
Yeah, I think best ball leagues is the best place to get him right now.
Yeah.
Just because of the games where he takes one first play of the game for 80 yards for a touchdown because Kyler hits him on a 10-yard slant and he plows over a guy. He's so interesting at 5'7", and he runs like Brandon Jacobs and just destroys people. He's the most curious receiver in this entire group, and I'll play devil's advocate a little bit here and just try to throw some shade and see where it goes. Rondale Moore's freshman season at Purdue was insane,
wasn't he?
His tape was bad shit, bat shit. I never understood the difference between bad shit and bat shit. Whatever.
Bat shit is what caused COVID, so this is kind of
good point
right now.
All right, yeah, I didn't think about that. He was really good his freshman season. He destroyed people, Ohio State in particular. It was great. His sophomore season, he had a hamstring injury that took him out of the games for, I don't know, half the season, more than half the season. And then his junior season, he had a lower body injury, which no level of research will tell you what that means. And my concern is that it was once again a hamstring injury or some sort of...
It's like the NHL injury reports where they just say upper body, lower body.
Yeah, it means nothing on the surface, but if you dig deeper, why would they phrase it so generically? It might be because it would hurt his NFL stock if they knew that he had the same hamstring.
Maybe he just had the runs every week.
Maybe he did, and that would be weird. But he also could have just had the same hamstring act up for a second season in a row. There's a chance that what his career looks like is that when he's on the field, he is awesome, and he is dangerous, and he can take any ball to the house, but he's on the field for 6 games a season, and that's my concern.
You go back to...
That's why I comp to the Deebo comp.
Yeah. Debo's a perfect example.
And he's on the field, is electric, and could at any given time could take the ball to the house. But yeah, injuries are what concerns you.
Yeah. So at least when he goes into a game healthy, you're going to get something. That's fun. let's move on to another very electric player who's got some question marks of his own. Drafted in the first round at the 20th overall pick to the New York Giants, Kadarius Toney out of Florida. What do we think of his rather unusual rise to a first-round draft selection?
Unusual is the only way to describe this. I mean, we all know, that Giants depth chart is nuts in that wide receiver room.
Loaded.
They just paid mad money for.
What are they doing?
It's Dave Gettleman. That guy's an idiot. But
yeah.
I'm struggling to find out where he's gonna find playing time. I mean, they just paid $18 million a year for Kenny Golladay, so he's gonna be on the field every play. Darius Slayton still strong. Sterling Shepard strong. Is Toney gonna be just he's gonna obviously be a special teams contributor, I would think, for them.
For
and
sure.
Special packages, but
absolutely,
he's not gonna be an every down player. It's not gonna happen.
No, and that's going back to some of the other points that I've made with other quarterbacks and situations that we've discussed as well. You need to see more from Daniel Jones as well. If you got a receiver that's fighting for playing time and a quarterback that is not putting up a ton of yards passing, it's not a great combo for fantasy. So for redraft purposes, I don't know that I would draft him.
And then on top of that, Saquon is back. He's going to take how many balls? He's going to take how many?
Same role receiving wise.
Exactly. And they're going to, I would assume, run the ball more now that they got Saquon back rather than Wayne freaking Gallman. So I don't see it with Toney.
Yeah, and Toney was a guy I really liked coming into the draft too. And then once he got drafted by the Giants, it just
to the right team.
Well, there goes that.
Sense.
Absolutely,
but the Giants, he would be sweet in Baltimore if you could add him to that rushing attack. That would be crazy.
Yeah. Let Lamar throw it 10 yards to Toney and let him do the rest.
Let him dance. But Daniel Jones,
he'd have been interesting in Tennessee too. I would have liked to see him gone there.
That would have been an interesting 1-2 backfield too, with him and Henry. Kind of little thunder and lightning. I mean, that's where I see Toney contributing at least earlier on is probably going to
play the Percy Harvin role.
Exactly. Kind of in the backfield, all over the place. Probably throw him in motion a lot of shallow dig routes, that kind of stuff. But he's useless in any sort. If it's a non-PPR league, I think he's effectively useless, at least in a redraft. Dynasty. Yeah. If you want to take a late round flyer at him, go ahead. But I'm not super.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Hard to say what his actual fantasy value is going to be, because when is he going to have a game with 10 catches in it? Like, I just don't know how he gets consistent enough production to be a guy that you're pumped about to have on your fantasy team. I don't get it. I don't get why the Giants spent a first-round pick on him. I get why they wanted Devonta Smith a little bit, just because he's, a more consistent player and you can use him anywhere on the field. But to settle for Toney, like 8 picks later or whatever they did, I don't see it.
Smith is a way more talented player than Toney. You could throw Devontae Smith, even with Slayton and Shepard there. You could probably throw Devontae Smith into that wide receiver 2 or 3 role.
Yeah.
You can't throw Toney into that wide receiver 2 or 3.
He's not. He's not ready. His rap career is a little too strong right now. Let's before we jump
Tony
into our
the
next
Tiger.
guy.
He's not great.
What a perfect breakfast cereal. Speaking of breakfast cereal, that's one of our sponsors. Just kidding, we don't have sponsors.
You know what? Okay. Just to go off on a little tangent, since we brought up Frosted Flakes and breakfast cereals, I normally absolutely love Honey Bunches of Oats. It's my favorite cereal. Honey
Good
Bunches
shit.
of Oats with almonds. That's my favorite cereal.
Not a sponsor.
I bought not a sponsor.
Hashtag not a sponsor.
I bought the frosted version of Honey Bunches of Oats, thinking, okay, Frosted Flakes and Honey Bunches of Oats, this is going to be incredible. It's just not. It's just.
Is it
bland.
just pure sugar?
No, maybe it's just not sugary enough. I don't know.
Oh, weird.
It's Like, just stray
Reduced
away
sugar,
from that.
but it's frosted.
I don't get it. Just
Strange.
stay away. If you're a Honey Bunches of Oats fan, stick with what you like. Don't veer.
You hear that, Honey Bunches of Oats?
Don't veer
Stop
into
making the
hashtag
frosted version.
we want you to sponsor, but
Not the frosted version.
just
though.
not the frosted version.
No.
Go with the almonds,
We want
the
it-
original. The strawberry one's actually pretty good. But
We won't take your dirty frosted money.
If I had to put
Actually, we will.
a power ranking of the four Honey Bunches of Oats varieties, frosted would be last.
Okay, all right. Let's
Falls
let's
into that
move on.
falls into that cereal number 4, just like Kadarius Toney does in the Giants wide receiver.
What a
room.
perfect
There we
segue
go.
into our next wide receiver, Amon-Ra St. Brown, drafted out of USC, going to Detroit in the 4th round. He's probably, first instinct, he's got one of the best landing spots of any of the receivers in this entire draft because he doesn't have as much competition as anyone. He's surrounded by mediocrity, and he is pretty great himself. What do you guys think of Amon-Ra's outlook this season and beyond?
I really like him actually in redrafts this year for like a later round. I think somebody's got to catch the ball in Detroit. You got Hockley's there, which he's going to be a target monster this year, getting a lot of
Goff's not a bad
catches.
quarterback.
Goff has shown he's been productive and had productive receivers with Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. So, and Detroit is in a rebuild, and they're going to be absolute trash this year, down in games, which there's going to be a lot of garbage time yards and garbage time points to go. So, Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be arguably their wide receiver 1 this year. So, it's not going to be pretty, but I think you'll get some production from him. Long-term wise, a little bit more hesitant with it if Detroit's in the rebuild because they're going to keep loading up at the receiver position as time goes on, and Goff, they could probably cut him after next year, draft a new quarterback, and then you've got to deal with the whole rookie quarterback situation again for a year and build the rapport and everything there. So there might be a little bit of a downward trend after that. But for redraft purposes, I think later on in the draft, he's somebody that you could sneak away with and get some good production this year.
Yep, pretty much same thing. I'm going to pretty much give him the same take as I gave with Devontae Smith. Obviously, there's a talent disparity between him and Smith, but the landing spot is right. I would consider him in a redraft league and a dynasty draft pretty, there's not going to be a huge gap there. I think that his upside is now. I think he's going to be contributing now. And, Tyrell Williams, speed guy, struggles to stay on the field. Rashad Perryman, speed guy, never really put up mad numbers. And then you got Quintez Cephas, a podcast favorite as a former Badger. But let's be honest about, where he sits on the talent scale. And St. Brown put up great numbers, 7 receiving touchdowns in 6 games last year with USC. So he puts up production on the field. I think that's going to be the same case in Detroit this rookie season at least.
Yeah, totally agree. Steps into the best landing spot, arguably, of anybody here, and good college tape from the very beginning. He didn't have a sudden breakout. He was just kind of always awesome at USC. Great tracking the ball downfield. Goff can get his deep targets with Tyrell and Amon-Ra. I'm excited about him for redraft and dynasty alike. Josh, you were right. Long term, they will draft other big time receivers that will take over the number 1 spot in Detroit eventually. Until that happens, Amon-Ra's a fun guy to have. So grab him when you can get him at a value. If you're in dynasty or a rookie draft, maybe late second round. If you can get him in the 3rd, cool. Falls into that category with a few other guys we've mentioned. Let's jump into another Brown, De'Ami Brown, drafted to Washington in the 3rd round out of North Carolina. Big time deep threat in college. Haven't seen enough tape on his other route tree options yet. What do we think alongside Terry McLaurin and Curtis Samuel? What's his future?
I mean, you got Fitzmagic there, so anything can happen. I mean,
deep threat for Fitzmagic, man.
Yeah, I mean, he's shown that he's been able to get production to his wide receivers. I mean, You got Devontae Parker, who didn't do a whole lot, and then Fitzmagic came into Miami and
breakout season.
Revived his career. So, yeah, I mean, you got Terry McLaurin there. It's got a nice young core. You got Curtis Samuel there as well. I like it a lot. I think for redraft leagues, he's somebody you could potentially, again, take a flyer on later in the
late
rounds on it and see where it goes. He's going to be on the field right away. They don't really have much else there. I mean, got those three guys are pretty much be your three wide receivers that they use, and dynasty purposes too. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, you know that the obvious number one in Washington is McLaurin. He's not taking any targets away from him, but Fitzmagic does like to whip the ball all over the field, and even when he's had
just likes to whip it out everywhere.
Whip it. Whip it real good. Bum, bum.
Long history of whipping it out.
He is going to be a very... I think him with Fitz, that's pretty, boom bust guy. I personally don't typically love these boom bust guys, but if they're used right, it's obviously, it's going to work out for him, and I think that it can in Washington. So I got no qualms about taking him, like you guys said, in those later rounds, especially in your redraft leagues. If you can get him late, go ahead. If it's a dynasty round, kind of again that mid to late round area.
Yeah, I mean, clearly one of the best deep threats coming out of college, but I checked some interviews on him because I always watch interviews of any player that I consider drafting in a dynasty league, and he was asked, what he thought of his route tree and what he could potentially do, and he said straight up, North Carolina didn't ask me to run other routes for the vast majority of my time. It was a lot of deep routes, and that's why my tape shows all these deep catches and nothing else. He believes that he can run the other routes, and I'm going to take him at his word, in part also because Chris Collinsworth, think what you will about him as an announcer.
He's just a blowhard, but whatever.
But he graded De'Ami Brown as a first-round talent right up alongside Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle, those kind of players, and Chris Collinsworth didn't understand why he fell so far, thought it was a huge value, steal of the draft for Washington. I'm not saying that that's automatically the case, but the more people that believe that De'Ami Brown can do more than just be a deep threat, the better I feel about his fantasy future, playing alongside Curtis Samuel, who's a specialist in the slot, good on the outside, specialist in the slot, and Terry McLaurin, who's already great. This can be one heck of an offense with Fitz right now and with a future QB that replaces him if they do the draft right down the road. I see a great dynasty future for
I really
for
like this guy De'Ami Brown. I don't understand why he's going all the way down to the third round. This guy is a first round talent. I just don't understand sometimes what these general managers are doing out here. That's my Collinsworth.
You sound like a mix of Collinsworth and Barack Obama.
I'll take that. that.
It's not the worst thing. The tone of voice needs to change. You got to get higher a little bit.
Does that count as our first celebrity appearance on our show?
Yeah, I guess that must be it then. Yeah. Thank you for joining us, Chris Collinsworth.
That was nice drop there.
We're gonna now that Chris is off to do his own podcast, we're gonna move on to our next wide receiver, Amari Rodgers, pairing up with maybe Aaron Rodgers or maybe trash heap Jordan Love. We'll find out. He was drafted in the third round, which is not high enough for Aaron Rodgers' standards. But what do you guys think coming out of Clemson? He's got some pretty nice highlights on tape. What's his future looking like?
Yeah, he's got some great highlights, but I think you hit the nail on the head. Who's throwing him the ball? That's the question everybody wants to know, and what's going to matter for his fantasy outlook as well. If Aaron Rodgers is there, I love it. He had great tape at Clemson. Shows he's proved he can play in big games, and Aaron Rodgers would love to have him as a target as well. That wide receiver 2 spot in Green Bay is up for grabs. I mean, Lazard has been injured part of the year last year. You got MVS, who maybe he'll catch the ball, maybe he won't. And Aaron Rodgers needs somebody that's more consistent lined up opposite of Devontae Adams. And Aaron Rodgers has proven that regardless, he can make any wide receiver relevant for fantasy and make multiple wide receivers relevant as well. So if Aaron Rodgers is there, absolutely love him for redraft purposes. Dynasty outlook, a little bit more hesitant with that. Same with any of the Devontae Adams owners as well, because once Rodgers is gone, you're going to see a drop off in production there unless somebody else comes in, because I don't think they're very confident with Jordan Love.
Yeah, what I'm intrigued by with Rodgers, with Amari Rodgers, is is because Devontae Adams on another show said if Aaron Rodgers goes, Devontae he's going to be a lot more hesitant to re-sign, and his contract is up after this season. So does that throw Amari Rodgers, if let's say they move on from Aaron, Devontae doesn't re-sign, does that throw Amari into that wide receiver 1 role? I would think that they would take another receiver, but you could still, if that happens, that still means Amari's going to be the wide receiver 1 for the Packers, at least at some point, if they lose both those guys. So
especially when he gets a year of experience under his belt before someone else comes in. He's going to just walk into that wide receiver 1 role until he's forced out of it by someone else, which, who knows, maybe that won't ever happen.
I saw the comps to him, or with him, and Randall Cobb. And Cobb had put up some real sweet years with the Packers. Of course, that's with Aaron Rodgers out there throwing the ball around. So it's very QB dependent. I personally don't see Aaron going anywhere, but if this were to happen and he were to move on to another team, then obviously that's going to affect Amari's production. It's all a toss-up.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. I think that sums it up. Mozzarella sticks are delicious. Let's move on to Dwayne Eskridge. Transitions, huh? Dwayne Eskridge gets drafted by Seattle in the late 2nd round. He's one of those smaller guys playing the slot a lot, speedster. He was joining DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett with Russell Wilson throwing him the ball. Should be fun to watch, if nothing else, in Seattle. What's the fantasy impact for Dwayne Eskridge?
Gotta let Russ cook.
Cook those mott sticks, huh?
Hashtag let Russ cook with those mott sticks. Are you eating
Heard it here
vegan
first.
mott sticks here or something?
No, I'm not eating anything.
That was amazing.
I'm craving things.
Yeah, I like it. I like the landing spot for him. They didn't have anybody else really for that wide receiver 3 spot. I mean, obviously you got DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett locked in as your wide receiver 1 and 2. For redraft purposes, I would probably not draft him. Have him sit on the waivers, keep an eye for him at least this year. For Dynasty outlook long term, yeah. I mean, Lockett's not going to be there forever. DK is one that they're going to keep around for a long time. So down the road, you got a lot of potential for Dwayne to be a bigger impact in their offense. But again, Russ is going to have to start passing the ball around more. Not that he doesn't want to. Pete Carroll wants to run the ball more, apparently.
Right.
So that's more of what the issue is with this offense. But if they let Russ start throwing the ball around, he's definitely got enough passing yards on the season and touchdowns to make 3 wide receivers fairly relevant. So,
Yeah, Tyler Lockett was interesting last year. He had kind of a sneaky year. He ended up as a top 10 receiver, which
is a lot sexier than it really was, given how few games he was playable.
Exactly. So
yeah. It was an all or nothing year for Lockett.
No kidding.
for his games.
I'm not so high on Eskridge. He will fall into that 3rd receiver spot, but Lockett did just sign a 4-year extension. And obviously we know DK is not going anywhere, so I'm not really too high on
the Olympics.
Well, we saw how that worked out for him. Finishing last in his 100-yard dash.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, they did take him in the 2nd round for a reason, but Seattle also doesn't have like the greatest drafting pedigree. I mean, they took Rashad Penny in the 1st, who's amounted to absolutely nothing.
Yep.
I don't know if I I'm not an Eskridge fan here. As a player, yes. His landing spot, not necessarily. So I personally am staying away from him.
Yeah, I get that. It sounds like Seattle's trying to make a little more of a push to pass more. I think that they realized that a lot of their success last year came from when Russ was cooking, and they really started to falter when they tried to go away from that and get back to Pete Carroll, run the ball football, given that their defense blows.
Round and pound, baby.
So yeah, if they can actually make a scheme change and throw the ball more, then maybe Eskridge becomes more valuable. Hopefully, you can just get him very late in your drafts or pick him up off the waiver wire. But if you're in a dynasty or having a rookie draft come up, you're probably going to have to draft him. And if so, just do so in the later rounds. I mean, third is pretty reasonable because most of the guys we've talked about so far on this podcast will be gone by then. That's when you can take Dwayne before the rest of the guys that get even more questionable in terms of their landing spots. Speaking of which, there's a lot of questions coming out of Houston right now. And Nico Collins was just drafted there in the third round. Quarterback, total mystery. Entire organization could sink into the ocean. What's going to happen for Nico Collins as this traditional A.J. Green style receiver?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Houston's just an absolute shit show right now. Who's throwing him the ball? I mean, you got Brandon Cooks there, which like we talked about a little bit earlier on. He's awesome. He usually finishes top 20 every year, regardless of where he's at. So he's always productive. So right away, he's locked in as the wide receiver too with that. But yeah, who's throwing him the ball? And honestly, for me right now, I'm not touching Houston until I know who's quarterbacking, because
pretend a hurricane just came through and just stay out of Houston.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's my outlook on it. Even for Dynasty right now, I'm staying away from anybody in Houston right now until more stuff is coming out and you figure out if Deshaun's there, if Deshaun's out of the league for a while, what's going on.
Yeah, same exact boat. I'm not touching him. He is going to fall into a pretty prominent role. It's kind of amazing to me that Brandon Cooks is their top receiver. Somehow that guy is just... They're idiots for giving up a second rounder for him. But Nico is probably going to fall into that, wide receiver 2, 3 for the Texans. But, dude, if Tyrod Taylor's throwing him the ball, that team's going to... They're going to have to draft a quarterback if Deshaun isn't on their team next year. Taylor's not the answer.
Mills.
Unless they
first pick on.
Unless Davis Mills shines, they're going to end up as probably a top 3 pick, assuming Deshaun doesn't play. Shit, they still had the third pick in the draft with Deshaun last year. So there's too many holes in that team. I really don't trust any of their players. I'm personally going to be staying away.
Yeah, for the organization of Houston to have already been struggling with horrible mismanagement and then to have their quarterback go down to a bunch of lawsuits that are probably going to, I don't know, maybe he's played his last down of football. Maybe he takes a year off and deals with this shit. Regardless, I think it's time that we retire the Houston Texans and pick up, Mexico City or London or someone else. Let's change it because this management is disgusting. Let's move on to these last 4 receivers we want to just quick touch on. We'll do very brief thoughts. Josh, Tutu Atwell, surprisingly second round pick, tiny receiver out of Louisville, goes to the Rams. What do you think? Does he have a fantasy impact? He's probably the gadget player, absolute
speedster. But yeah. There's a lot of mouths to feed in LA, so he might see more time with injuries. You got Stafford in there now, and Stafford is a fantastic quarterback when he's on the field, and that offense is going to be insane to watch if he's healthy. But yeah, Tutu, I think he's looking at more special teams right now and maybe work his way into a wide receiver 3-4 role in there. But I think redraft purposes, put him down, mark him down on a sheet of paper or something for players to watch as the season starts and just kind of eye the roll. Dynasty-wise, yeah, if you're picking your 3rd, 4th round, maybe take a flyer on him and let him sit for a bit just to kind of see how his role works out. But yeah, redraft wise, I'm not touching it with how many mouths to feed there are in LA.
Sitting in the same exact spot, 4th round in a rookie draft, okay, but I'm not. He's going to be a 4th receiver. They did take him in the 2nd, but I think that was more to kind of provide a downfield threat, because pretty much everything that the Rams offense has been over the last couple of years, is they don't have any downfield threats. So it's been mostly crossing patterns, underneath stuff, feed the running backs, that kind of stuff. They also brought in Deshaun Jackson for that same purpose. Now Deshaun it's pretty much inevitable that he's going to get hurt. That's an annual tradition,
Is this his 32nd team, or where are we at with Deshaun?
You know what? I would say 33rd.
Gotcha.
But there's only 32 teams, so I think
because the Oilers.
He's
that's
just,
right.
He's like the Kardashians, where he's just gonna hit up everybody in the league, just like the Kardashians and the NBA players. So. But going back to Tutu, yeah, late pick in rookie, 4th round rookie draft. Yes, go ahead. Before that, I'm steering clear. I'm not touching him in redraft. And dynasty wise, if you want to, again, deep bench, go ahead. But I'm not super high on him, at least in his current role.
Heard. Josh Palmer. Los Angeles Chargers, 3rd round pick. Not a lot of tape in college because his quarterback play sucked in college. Josh, you just drafted him a few days ago in our Dynasty League. What gives you hope about Josh Palmer and his Dynasty value?
You kind of stole my thunder with that, because Tennessee's quarterback play was absolutely atrocious when he was there. I was reading a PFF article by Andrew Erickson that touched on his deep balls that were thrown to him, only 31% of them were deemed catchable. So there is not a lot of tape because of how bad he is. The quarterback play was not not Josh Palmer, but he's 6'1". He's got great hands, good route running as well. I really like the Chargers offense as well. It's up and coming. You got Justin Herbert there as well, so that's why I took a little bit of a flyer on him. There are some other receivers that are going to be competing for that wide receiver 3 spot, but with new coaches coming in, they aren't really necessarily tied to any of them either. So another PFF guy had comped him to Terry McLaurin as well too, so that's a little bit of a good comp as well for him. So I like the aspect for it. Redraft purposes, again, he's one of those that you just kind of sit and see how everything plays out. Don't necessarily have to take a draft pick on him. Dynasty wise, somebody 3rd, 4th round, take a shot and just kind of see how it plays out.
Yeah,
3rd, 4th in a rookie draft, just to confirm.
Correct. Yes.
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 Yeah. I would feel he does have some sweet traits, but he was a 3-star recruit coming out of high school
in Canada.
In Canada, and he didn't really have great college production. Of course, he had the QB situation to deal with, but going back to Cephas, he had freaking Hornibrook throwing in the ball, and he still put up pretty good numbers. So I don't know. I'm not big on him, but there are opportunities for him to at least get on the field. So, 3rd, 4th round, I guess, in a rookie draft. I'm not touching him in a redraft.
No.
He's a bench guy in a dynasty situation.
Yeah, totally agree. I believe in Justin Herbert, and therefore I'm always interested in who the Chargers are going to have at receiver. But until we see it start happening, I don't know what to think. Jalen Guyton was pretty good last year. They've got some guys who are going to be ahead of Josh Palmer, at least at the beginning of the season. Maybe it changes as the season goes on, but we'll see. Let's pop over to check in on old TB12 Tom Brady down in Tampa. He's got a new receiver Jalen Darden out of North Texas, right after Antonio Brown was just accused of something else. What did he do? Beat up a semi-truck driver?
Oh, moving. No, so last
moving truck. That's it. Moving
truck. Yeah. So last offseason when he was,
sorry,
he just had while he was going on his absolute just fuck up streak. After the incident with the feet and the incident with the helmet, well, then he goes and assaults a moving truck driver with he was throwing rocks at the guy and at his truck. What a psycho.
Idiot.
But they did the Bucks did re-sign Antonio Brown, and that just puts...
To a suspended contract.
Yep. The guy's only suing for $30,000. I don't know. I would think you could get more out of that, but he probably didn't want to go balls deep because that case could just
try to get your 30.
Out. Yeah, go
take
get
your 30, walk away,
and walk. But Darden, the case with Darden, I mean, Antonio Brown. You obviously got Mike Evans. You obviously got Chris Godwin. Scotty Miller played a sweet role. Where does Darden fall on that depth chart? As your fifth receiver. So
if everyone's on the field,
assuming
fifth,
yes, assuming there's no cryotherapy frozen feet incidents with AB again.
Even Tyler Johnson looked good at times last year too. So it's I've got the same aspect you do with this, Ellis, that I redraft absolutely not even in consideration right now. No way whatsoever.
Deep bench stash, I'm good with it.
Deep as fuck bench.
That wide receiver core will not look the same at all in 2 years' time, and Jalen Darden will be one of the only guys left on contract. So stash him if you have the space to do it. But redraft, don't even think about it.
Yeah, he's one that if there's a couple injuries to some of the wide receivers, he could definitely have production because any wide receiver could have a lot of production with Tom Brady throwing the ball, but he's got too big of a hurdle to jump with all the guys in front of him.
Yeah. Last guy we want to bring up on wide receivers, Tylan Wallace. Only worth bringing up because he was also drafted to Baltimore, a very wide receiver needy team. He was late fourth rounder. They already had Rashad Bateman from the first round. Of course, Hollywood Brown's already there, Sammy Watkins. Obviously, he's not a redraft player. What is his only strictly dynasty value?
I see him in the same exact
bench
spot.
Stash?
I see him in the same exact spot as Darden. Stash him in
good talent
and see if when he does hit the field if they can do something with him. But that's about it for me.
The exact same way. I mean, we already had that discussion with Lamar Jackson that he's passing for 180 yards a game. So you're looking at their wide receiver, maybe 3, maybe 4. I mean, you're not going to get any production out of that unless we see a change in their offensive scheme.
Yeah, if your bench is deep enough to dig through the bargain bin to find guys to fill it, then Tylan Wallace might as well be one of them. But otherwise, no need in any small bench or redraft league.
Way to finish strong. Good work, boys. Ricky, before we wrap this up, for all the listeners out there, we did record this before the announcement of the Julio trade to the Titans. So please just excuse the mentioning of him in the Jalen Waddle and Rondale Moore segments. One more thing that we all need all you guys to do, hit us up in the DMs on both IG and Twitter. That's at Dead Arm Sports on both IG and Twitter. And make sure you use that hashtag DAS. Hashtag DAS. On your chosen listening platform, subscribe, rate, review. Let's blow this thing up. We'll see you next time.